but I don't understand. It's like the last. And then I don't have some. I would be able to do this for. So I should I get one? I guess now. Still okay. It's just different. You can sell. I don't know what that is. I have him on the list of, I don't know, general rules for. All of the defensive. Exhibits over. Okay, so how do I just don't. Yeah, because I was just telling her, okay, that's all I can give you is an exhibit number and a page number to reference or. Yeah, you can do that, but if you want that on the transcript, then, yeah, please send it. So I think I'll just comes with. Okay. Is it this? You feel like I don't know. I see what you're saying. Yeah. You like just okay, no worries. Actually. Yeah. I'm gonna probably stay here. Try to get out of extra days to you. Today's is very challenging. So this was. So I got. Yeah.
All right, Debbie, just let me know when they're ready and then we'll have some idea.
No, I think I'm here to help.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Oh, it is. It's like, okay, I almost got it right. It's like crayon. Okay, for you.
Connor, did you give us 5 minutes or 15?
Oh, no, I was just 5. He's checking on the jury now.
Could we have 5 more, Your Honor?
What's going on?
Just wants to use the restroom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you have them turn off the jury light and then we'll know when they're ready?
All rise for the jury.
Oh, well, oh, did we? Well, we weren't ready for him.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, y'all. Okay.
False alarm. And back.
Honor.
They just about it, didn't I?
A little bit. All right, now we're ready.
Great, great.
Okay.
All rise for the jury.
Thank you.
All jury accountable.
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. Tobin, next question.
The break came at an opportune time. There are just a couple of small record items from the first part of my examination that I'd like to just confirm and make sure we're okay. Can we look at plaintiff's exhibit 314, please? Mr. Bevans, you recall me asking you earlier about an escrow waiver that Ms. Zong signed to confirm that she would pay taxes directly at the very beginning of her loan.
Yes,
Are we looking at the escrow waiver that she signed in August of 2004 when she got the loan so that she could pay taxes directly?
yes.
I'd like to move admission of plaintiff's exhibit 314.
Also no objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
And I was also advised that I misspoke on one of my exhibits. I haven't moved for admission of joint exhibit 50, which is a March 4th, 2011 letter about a foreclosure referral. So I would move admission of that as well. Want to see it?
I have no issue with that.
Thank you.
All right, 50 is admitted.
Can we look at joint exhibit 90, please, where we left off? Mr. Bevans, I think you just told us what a SPOC is. Could you just repeat that, please, so we can proceed
Yeah.
from there?
Yes, a SPOC is a single point of contact, and it's a contact within the company that you will specifically work with for your release options. In this case, in this letter, is saying loss mitigation is the person that is your single point of contact.
So is this a letter sent to Ms. Zong in September of 2011 advising that Ms. Zong could contact Ms. Stinson to talk about loss mitigation?
Yes, it is.
Why was it that PNC sent this letter offering a single point of contact in September of 11?
Well, it appears that we sent that letter as a result of our reshuffling our single point of contacts responsibilities. Every borrower was assigned one, and if we move those single point of contacts from Shelley Stinson to someone else, it automatically generates a letter out to the loans that are affected by that that shuffle. And so that's what it appears this letter was.
Does this letter indicate that PNC was still open to discussing hardship options with Ms. Zong?
Yes, it does.
Did Ms. Zong follow up to your knowledge on this suggestion?
No.
Move admission of exhibit 90.
No objection, Your Honor.
90 admitted.
Did there come a time, Mr. Bevans, when PNC restarted the foreclosure process?
Yes.
Approximately when did that occur?
I believe it was in January of 2012.
And so by January of 2012, how many mortgage payments did Ms. Zong owe PNC?
Well, it would have been December 2010 and all of 2011. And then, of course, January of 2012.
So at the time foreclosure restarted, she owed 14 monthly payments?
Yes.
What did PNC do to restart the foreclosure process in early January of 2012?
We made a referral to our foreclosure counsel.
Did you send information to foreclosure counsel?
Yes.
Does PNC or foreclosure counsel, which is responsible for sending out notice of the foreclosure sale to Ms. Zong?
The foreclosure counsel.
So does PNC rely on its foreclosure counsel to send out that those communications?
Yes.
Does PNC expect that foreclosure counsel will rely on the information that has been provided by PNC?
Yes.
In this instance, was it necessary? Well, no, I'll strike that. Are you familiar with the term bidding instructions, Mr. Bevans?
Yes.
What does the term bidding instructions refer to?
The bidding instructions is what we would provide to our foreclosure counsel to represent the lender bid at the sale.
Would direct your attention to Exhibit 104. This is a 4-page document, Mr. Bevans. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is this exhibit?
This is the bid instruction sheet.
Right, and there's an indication there that there's a specified bid of $543,150. What does that refer to?
That would be the bid instructions received by the foreclosure counsel.
So does that mean that that's how much they should bid to buy the property on behalf of the lender if nobody else bids?
That's correct.
Move admission of Exhibit 104.
Also no objection, Your Honor.
104 admitted.
Mr. Bevans, did the foreclosure sale take place as scheduled on March 6th of 2012?
Yes.
Exhibit 103, please. Is Exhibit 103 the foreclosure deed for this property after the sale happened?
Yes, it is.
Move admission of Exhibit 103.
Also no objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
I have no further questions for Mr. Bevans at this time.
Mr. Howard?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect on those points, Mr. Hidary?
Cross, Your Honor.
That's right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
There's a few facts I want to go over. When Ms. Zong would submit information as PNC requested, would she typically mail it, fax it, email it? How would she send it over to PNC?
Well, just from what I've seen, it's normally had been faxed.
And are you aware that she would sometimes mail information as well?
I don't recall that being the mode. It's normally what I had seen was fax.
And would you agree that, at least based on the exhibits that you just came up with, I guess on August 2011, PNC asked Ms. Zong to submit more information?
I don't recall the exact date, but that time frame, yes.
And then September 2011, PNC said, here's your new contact person. Would you agree with that characterization, the single point of contact we talked about?
We just went over that, yes.
And are you aware that after that, PNC continued to ask Ms. Zong for more information, different types of information?
We continued to service the loan after that point in time, yes.
Well, and are you aware that after that time, Ms. Zong indeed submitted more information as PNC would request?
Broadly, yes, that's a true statement based on the other letters that we had sent and information provided, yes.
And in fact, up until February of 2012, Ms. Zong was still submitting information to PNC. Is that correct?
Not loss mitigation, that we had been for mortgage relief. It was related, from my recollection, to hazard insurance.
And so up until a couple of weeks before the foreclosure, Ms. Zong was still sending things to PNC.
Yes.
You mentioned a few things that I thought were interesting, and I want to just explore them a bit. In the middle of your testimony, after Mr. Tobin was asking a lot of things, sort of buried in there was a discussion of the coupon book. You remember that?
Yes.
And in the coupon book, you mentioned that even though it said Ms. Zong was supposed to pay by February 1st, 2011, she really was supposed to send 2 additional coupons. Is that a fair characterization?
No, I don't believe so. I think what we're trying to say is that the coupon book, from our perspective, would have had the December 1, 2010 coupon, the January 1, 2011 coupon, and then February.
So if, according to your characterization, if things were done properly, there should have been a December 1st coupon, a January 1st coupon, and then a February 1st coupon. Is that
That's
fair?
correct. Yes.
But the documents that PNC sent Ms. Zong began on February 1st, 2011. Is that correct?
Which documents are we referring to?
The coupon book.
Well, all we have is a copy of the first coupon in a book being February 1. And I'm just saying that from our records, based on the escrow analysis, the effective date of the escrow analysis, and the due date of the loan at the time of the analysis would have reflected December 1, 2010. And the possibility is that the 2 payments that, first 2 payments possibly that we returned, or even the 2 payments that we deposited in through escrow advance possibly could have been the coupons, the first 2.
Let me ask you a question. Do you know that in this litigation, Ms. Zong requested a copy of the coupon book?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Do you know that PNC said that it didn't exist?
I don't know that that was the response, but I know that would be the case, yes.
So when Ms. Zong requested the coupon book, you understand that PNC would say you can't provide it to her, right?
A copy of a coupon book way after that being provided, and especially when we're talking about a coupon book from 2011 and now, yeah, it would be impossible to get a duplicate book.
Are you aware that your counsel previously argued on behalf of PNC and stated that PNC, and I'm going to quote this, if there's one thing that wasn't clear, it's that a coupon book started on February 1st because PNC lacks the ability to print.
Nobody's reading from it.
Let me,
We rephrase the question.
sure. Are you aware that your counsel, PNC's counsel, made argument in front of the Court of Appeals?
That's going to be improper, and also it's not evidence. Any the opening statements or even the questions asked are not evidence, so that wouldn't be relevant.
Well, I'm going to ask for an admission against interest, Your Honor.
Okay.
And are you aware that your counsel previously admitted?
Objection, Your Honor. We're talking about the Court of Appeals arguments.
Well,
Not in context for this, don't we have any facts, don't we have any foundation for this, Bevans has any knowledge of this?
Well,
what's the source of the admission?
representation by counsel of what PNC can or cannot do.
No, the source meaning when was it made and in what venue?
Then this would have been argument in 2016, Your Honor.
All right. If that's not in a pleading or elsewhere in the,
It's in the transcript.
All right, this would require. Yes, I have to, but this will- I don't know what happens in 2020.
all right. Why don't you hold that question, Mr. Hidari, and you can move on to your other ones. We can come back to it when you're ready. When you let me know when you've exhausted all your other lines of inquiry.
Appreciate it, Your Honor. Before we get to that, I'm going to ask you just another miscellaneous question. Is it your belief that PNC can print coupon books that perhaps go prior to the date of that escrow analysis that you discussed earlier?
Are you asking, can we manipulate the due date of the coupon
Yes.
book? The coupon book, when it's generated, it's system generated. So the coupon book in this case was generated as a result of the escrow analysis being requested. It knows, here's an analysis, we got to create a coupon book, and the effective date of the analysis drives the first coupon in the book. And that's how the system, they generate the coupon books. And if you're talking about going to just a standalone coupon generation, I'm not sure what the possibilities would have been there.
So in terms of this escrow analysis that was created on January 27th, 2011, when it was generated, would it have been possible to generate a coupon booklet that began on December 10 or December 1st, 2010? Would the system have been able to do that?
Well, I think the January book that we did, or the analysis, I remember, did had an effective date of December 1, 2010, which would have generated that first coupon of December 1, 2010. So that's what we believe did happen.
So you believe that the first coupon in the coupon book actually say December 10?
December 1, 2010, yes.
And if that coupon book did not actually say December 1st, 2010, but it actually said February 1st, 2010, do you think it would be reasonable, with you not being present next to Miss Zong, for Miss Zong to assume that she was supposed to make the first payment on February 1st, 2011?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
I really wouldn't know what she may think beyond the conflict then that would exist in the escrow analysis saying December 1, and her, if that were the case, having a coupon book of February 1. That in my mind, if I'm being asked what I would do, it would generate a call.
Okay. And do you remember a few minutes ago when, or maybe a few hours ago when we were talking, you mentioned that that analysis would actually come first and then the coupon book would come after?
Yes.
Do you remember talking about that?
Yes.
But your position is that Ms. Zong should have actually looked at the coupon book and then gone back to the prior documentation, looked at that, and then tried to figure out if a payment should have been different than a coupon book?
Well, yeah, again, I don't know exactly what her thought process was at that particular time, but and again, I don't know that I've seen it indirectly in notes, but the conversation of knowing that we're going to spread the escrow shortage over 60 months and reduce the payment dramatically, the notes didn't reflect it, but more than likely there may have been a discussion before the coupons came that might have said, here's what your payment will be. And all along, everything's consistent with the payment being due December 1st, 2010.
And you said something that's interesting, which is there might have been a conversation, this might have been somehow discussed, but we don't have any of those audio recordings, do we?
No.
As you were testifying a few minutes ago, you mentioned that when Ms. Zong sent these payments that said that were 3,800 and some change, in accordance with the coupon books, they were returned saying payments do not meet exceptions guidelines. You recall discussing that?
Yes.
And you said that, PNC does not keep partial payments or take partial payments. Do you recall that as well?
Yes.
Let's pull up Exhibit 50. Or first, let's start with Exhibit 87, please. Yes. This is plaintiff's. All right, this is the letter we discussed earlier. So as we were discussing, you mentioned that partial payments get returned to you, right?
Yes,
And here, if we can highlight in the bottom, it mentions, therefore, any payment received for less than the total monthly amount due will be returned to you.
yes.
Do you know if this payment was actually returned to Ms. Zong?
This payment is the payment that I believe we shorted the escrow and posted the principal and interest.
It's a simple question because up in the top, it mentions this amount was less than your regular monthly payment.
Right.
And you also mentioned that if they're less, if they're partial payments, then they're not accepted, they're returned, right?
Yes,
Here was, according to PNC, a partial payment, but you guys kept it, right?
no, actually, in the lender's view, a partial payment, this loan was current. And it was a payment that satisfied the principal and interest, and it didn't include the escrow. But a partial payment from a lender's perspective is if you owe 2, 3, 4 payments and you send one.
What I found interesting is that as we've been discussing these letters, you've been talking about this is the lender's perspective, like you just mentioned, or this is what we meant. When Ms. Zong gets these letters, does she have the lender's perspective? Is that what you think?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Do you think the average person who reads this letter reads it with PNC's interpretation or according to what the letter says?
Same objection.
Sustained.
Let's pull up P50. Is this a true and correct copy of a letter that PNC sent my
Yes.
client? We'll move to admit P50, Your Honor. I don't believe so, Your Honor.
No objection.
And we're talking about the same thing here, where after Ms. Zong started making those books in accordance with the coupons, and you return them saying insufficient funds because they were partial payments. Here we're talking about a partial payment once again, and PNC's position is that it puts it in the suspense account. Do you remember talking about the suspense account with Mr. Tobin?
I do.
And is my characterization that you mentioned that if the payments are partial, they go into the suspense account and then they get applied elsewhere down the road?
Yes.
So this is another example of taking Ms. Zong's money that, according to you, is partial, keeping it, and then not returning it, right?
Again, because the account's past due. And the other scenario, the account was current.
Okay. I want to go into the chronology. So for the month of November, that document we just saw a second ago, my client paid $2,713, and that was her November payment that she made. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let's look at P49. And then December, my client made $2,838.92. Is that a fair characterization? Let's just make sure.
Yes.
And we'll go ahead and admit, well, does this appear to be a true and correct copy of a letter that PNC sent my client?
Yes.
We will admit P49.
No objection, Your Honor, but this does appear to be cumulative. I mean, we've covered this in great detail already.
No objection to the document that you met, Your Honor.
All right, P49 is admitted, and you can renew your objection. You'll see where this is leading.
And then in January, my client made her monthly payment of $2,838.92. Is that fair?
Yes,
I think we did cover this on direct.
And then on February 1st,
As we did that, the payment in February.
precisely, Your Honor. And there was 3 checks that were mailed after that, each for $3,891.98. And those funds were basically returned to my client saying, does it meet payment guidelines? Is that a fair characterization?
yes.
And so for every single one of these months, until PNC stopped accepting, she continued making these payments. Would you agree with that?
Yes, excluding the escrow portion, yes.
You mentioned something about agency when you were talking with Mr. Tobin, and you mentioned that PNC ended up sending the notices of foreclosure to, I guess, foreclosure counsel, and then foreclosure counsel ended up sending those notices out. Is that,
Objection, Your Honor. It totally mischaracterizes the testimony.
well, let me ask you the question is, again, how would you characterize the testimony as far as how the foreclosures occur in terms of sending out notice?
We rely upon foreclosure counsel to address that.
Okay. And are you aware that foreclosure counsel previously sent notice of cancellation to my law firm?
No.
Let's pull up Exhibit 365. Is McCurdy and Candler the foreclosure counsel you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Move to admit. This is P35. Move to admit P365.
365.
And I want to pull up the attachment, which is 366.
Any objection to 365 and 366?
We object to these because they're not PNC documents. We're going to have somebody from McCurdy testify in this case. So I think these documents should be weighed in. Mr. Bevans has testified, it's not familiar, so.
All right. So if the authentication hasn't been laid at 365, there's an objection.
Your Honor, this would once again be a admission against interest, and PNC would not have to have personal knowledge so long as it is proffered in the case and it is a position which is contrary to your position.
Overruled.
So who's-
I'm sorry, sustained. I don't believe foundation has been established.
Do you think that, or does PNC believe that just because Ms. Zong had financial difficulties, it could circumvent having to actually provide her notice of the foreclosure?
Not at all.
Would you agree that prior to PNC's rejection of the checks, she continued making payments monthly?
She submitted payments, but not in the appropriate amount, yes.
I also wanted to pull up, I guess what she had is a joint exhibit that we just discussed a moment ago in terms of the actual foreclosure notice. Let's pull up joint exhibit 104. And just looking at this document, it mentions that the lender on this document is Wells Fargo Bank and a GSR 2004-12. Would you agree with that?
That's correct.
And let's jump to Exhibit JX 103. And let's scroll down to the bottom of this. Okay. It mentions that whereas talks about Wells Fargo, so forth. And let's go down to the next page, the signature page. Here it discusses Amir and Faye by Wells Fargo Bank, NA, some numbers and letters by PNC Bank, NA as attorney. In fact, you would agree with that characterization as well.
Yes.
And so you'd agree that this foreclosure was conducted on behalf of Wells Fargo Bank, NA, GSR 2004-12.
Objection, Your Honor. Cause for legal conclusion from a lay witness and recovered.
I made my point, Your Honor, and
Okay, and the question is withdrawn.
no further questions.
All right, any re-examination on any of that? Mr. Tobin, Mr. Howard? Mr. Hadary, can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down, sir.
Thank you.
All right. You can call your next witness.
Well, that would be Wells Fargo's representative now.
I would advise you. It's very short. Raise your right hand. Can you solemnly swear on the farm that you will give upon this court the whole truth and nothing but the truth so help you?
I do.
Now, see. And for the court records, please spell your first and last name.
Peter Favorite, Peterfavorite.
Good afternoon, Mr. Favorite.
Good afternoon.
My name is Yasha Hadiri, and I represent Faye Zong, who's the plaintiff in this case.
All right.
And when we're communicating right now, if I refer to you, well, strike that question. Are you here on behalf of Wells Fargo?
I am.
And so with that said, as we communicate right now, if I refer to you, I'm not talking about yourself in your individual capacity. I'm talking about you as Wells Fargo. Is that a fair agreement we can have?
Understood.
Thank you, sir. Do you understand that Wells Fargo's position in this case is one of having already admitted liability, and now we're only focusing on questions of harm that has happened to my client?
Mr. Favorite is not here as an attorney for Wells Fargo.
No, but he's just asking his awareness of it, so I'll allow that.
I'm not aware of that. Oh,
I'm going to ask you some just miscellaneous questions, and we can go through them.
all right.
Is it Wells Fargo's position that the foreclosure on Miss Zong's house has caused her zero damages?
I'm not aware of that position.
Does Wells Fargo think that the foreclosure of our house caused stress to Ms. Zong?
I'm not aware of
Hold
it.
up, sir. And the grounds of the objection?
No foundation, Your Honor.
Okay. And why don't we lay some groundwork here? Why do you think he'd be able to kind of be the one to speak for these conclusions?
All right, so let's take a step back. And I'm just trying to go a little quicker. What research or what preparation have you performed prior to your testimony here today?
Well, as I understand it, it's a very old case.
Speak up, please.
I'm sorry. As I understand it, it's a very old case. My involvement would have began in early 2013, I believe. I would have performed some research on the allegations of the complaint, the exhibits, something of the foreclosure record, and I would have had discussions with various personnel who might have had some knowledge relevant to the allegations of the complaint.
Have you explored, when I say you, I'm talking about Wells Fargo, has Wells Fargo explored how this foreclosure has harmed my client?
Not to my awareness, no.
So if I told you that Wells Fargo spent several years exploring how it's harmed my client, that would be a surprise to you?
He's already said he has no knowledge of it. Sustained.
Has Wells Fargo admitted that it foreclosed on Miss Zong's property?
Not to my
Hold up,
knowledge, no.
sir.
Your Honor, this is an admission.
All right, but I'm just wondering why it needs to come out through this witness. This just seems procedurally.
He's your 30B6 rep. He's speaking on behalf of the company. And so he can either admit it or deny it.
All right, I think there's a way for you to get these admissions in. We can address that at the next break, but it doesn't seem like this is the appropriate witness for that.
All right.
It's got a relevance objection under the circumstances of Wells Fargo's status in the case. Not sure why we need to get into any of this.
Well, this gets into PNC's.
All right, I've already ruled. Let's move on.
Sure. Are you aware of the pleadings that have been asserted in this case? Have you reviewed the complaint, the answer, documents of those types?
I certainly reviewed the complaint 10, 11 years ago. I reviewed it again at some point last week. I reviewed an affidavit that I submitted in, I believe it was 2013.
So I'm going to need you to lean forward, talk a little bit more clearly into that microphone.
I'm sorry. Some review, minimal, I would think.
You remember that my client asserted or alleged that Wells Fargo foreclosed on her property?
Yes, that surprised me. It's Wells Fargo was not involved in the foreclosure.
When my client asserted that, well, let me strike that for a second. Do you recall what Wells Fargo's position was when my client mentioned that Wells Fargo foreclosed on their property? You just said it would surprise you. Do you remember what your answer was in the complaint?
I do not know.
Would it assist to see what your answer was?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We've been down this road.
Yeah, I don't see the relevance.
Your Honor, this goes into the question of whether PNC actually foreclosed on behalf of the correct entity.
Testify the answer to that question, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Favorite has already testified his understanding about the answer to that question.
We have,
Which was just that he didn't know.
That he was surprised to hear because his understanding was the Wells Fargo had involved foreclosure.
Okay, so if that's relevant, then I think he can explore that, but I'm not quite seeing why the complaint or the pleadings are playing into that, but you can connect those dots for me.
sure, Your Honor, we have two fundamental issues here.
Well, I'll just let you re-ask the question. Let's go from there
Okay,
or rephrase it.
sure. In terms of this litigation, has Wells Fargo admitted that it foreclosed on my client's property?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Your Honor, this is impeachment.
It's not because unless you have a prior statement.
I actually do, but I have two prior statements. We'll go forward, and I'm going to recharacterize. When Wells Fargo, have you submitted an affidavit in this litigation?
I have. I referenced it earlier. I referenced the affidavit earlier in my testimony.
Could we pull up Exhibit 237? Does this affidavit look familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
Before we go down, I was going to ask you some questions. Does Wells Fargo believe that the entity known as Wells Fargo Bank NA GSR 2004-12 exists?
I'm not aware of any such entity bearing that designation.
So the answer to that would be no, you're not aware. I mean, no, it doesn't exist.
I'm not aware of any such entity.
Okay.
In my belief, it's a real entity with Wells Fargo's name attached at the front of it, mistakenly.
So I'd like you to explain that statement. You mentioned that Wells Fargo, well, strike that question. Yes or no, Wells Fargo Bank NA GSR 2004-12 exists or does not exist?
I don't recall this exact question. Why don't we see where it goes? If you're establishing foundation,
I'm not aware of any such entity.
Do you know if Wells Fargo's business records indicate that such an entity exists?
I made a review of those records in, I believe it was 2013, and could not locate anything suggesting that it exists.
Okay. Was it Wells Fargo's position that the assignment by PNC to Wells Fargo should not have been made?
I'm.
well, hold up.
Mhm.
I mean, I think if that's within He's yet to establish, I don't even know who this is or what his job title is. I mean,
All right,
maybe we can start there.
let's, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, Your Honor. Could you explain your role with Wells Fargo?
At the time I submitted these affidavits, I was in a group called the Special Accounts Group that examines and attempts to resolve different issues that are posed to us by management. And this particular set of allegations was one of those matters that was raised to me.
And when you say these specific allegations were one of those matters, do you recall what sort of allegations?
The overall complaint, and I believe at the time I first became aware of this, there was a default for failure to answer the complaint within the prescribed time.
And what were you trying to investigate with regards to allegations?
Simply take a fresh look at just what had happened, what was going on, because it was unusual.
When you say it was unusual, what was unusual?
That there was a default. That was the most glaring thing. So initially, the review was concerning just what happened, what led to the default.
And what did you find about that?
Um,
Right. So if he's not permitted to speak on behalf of the entire bank, I don't see why this line of questioning is relevant.
Is he not permitted to speak on behalf of the entire bank? Are you
That-
here to speak on behalf of Wells Fargo, or are you just here as an individual?
my understanding is a bit of both.
When you say a bit
Okay.
of both, what do you mean?
I submitted in 2 affidavits on behalf of Wells Fargo,
Okay.
and my understanding is that's what I'm here to testify about.
That's actually good to know. So I'm going to step away and let's talk about the affidavits that you submitted.
All right.
Have you reviewed those affidavits recently?
I did.
And when was the last time you reviewed them?
2 days ago.
Okay. I actually want to go through your affidavit and I want to have you explain certain things so that we can understand why you say what you say. I want to go to paragraph 11. All right, so we start here. And you mentioned that PNC Bank executed a February 15th, 2012 assignment without the knowledge or consent of Wells Fargo. How do you know that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. So your first statement in this affidavit, PNC Bank executed a February 15th, 2012 assignment without the knowledge or consent of Wells Fargo. How did you find that out?
First, I investigated whether such an entity exists in Wells Fargo records. And then I made calls and had meetings with more senior and experienced personnel who might be able to explain why the assignment was made. And with the understanding that an entity receiving assignment should have some awareness of why the assignment is being made, that's what led to that statement.
I wanted to jump down to paragraph 13 and talk a little bit about that. You mentioned that, and before we go forward, are you aware that March 6, 2012 was the date of the foreclosure of my client's house?
I'm not presently aware. I'm assuming that I was aware at the time
Okay.
this affidavit was created and signed.
You mentioned on the first line that on March 6, 2012, PNC, again, without the knowledge or consent of Wells Fargo and purportedly as its agent and attorney in fact, foreclosed on its subject property in the name of Wells Fargo. What's the basis of that understanding?
Again, similar to what I just described, if an entity is foreclosing with the suggestion of Wells Fargo's permission or grant of power, it's a reasonable conclusion that Wells Fargo would have a record of it.
And Wells Fargo was not able to find a record of it.
That's correct.
And then on paragraph 14, you mentioned that at the time of the foreclosure, Wells Fargo is not the holder of the note. Wells Fargo is never the holder of the note. And could you explain how you came up with that understanding?
The holder of the note is another descriptor for the trustee of the trust that holds title to the property within the trust, which would include the note here that's a partial subject of the case. And U.S. Bank was that holder or trustee, not Wells Fargo.
And in terms of sort of figuring that out and researching that, what did you do to come up with that information?
Same thing I described earlier, examining bank records and turning to discussions with other personnel who might have some insight into something that wasn't apparent from bank records.
Is it Wells Fargo position that the foreclosure should not have occurred in Wells Fargo's name?
I don't think you've established that you can speak on behalf of the corporation.
Well, let's jump down to paragraph 18. You state that Wells Fargo was improperly included as a party to the foreclosure. Why do you say that?
It's my understanding that the plaintiff included Wells Fargo as a defendant in the case, despite Wells Fargo not being involved in the foreclosure.
So Wells Fargo, you just mentioned Wells Fargo was not involved in the foreclosure?
Correct.
I want to jump down to paragraph 21. You mentioned, had Wells Fargo been made aware of the assignment or the foreclosure before the filing of this lawsuit, it would have worked with plaintiffs to rescind the foreclosure sale. And could you explain why you said that?
Because that mistaken term of Wells Fargo being included in the descriptor of the trust, we would have reached out to the servicer, in this case PNC, to try to get that corrected.
Do you know whether or not the property was foreclosed, my client's property was foreclosed in Wells Fargo's name?
I do not know.
Would you agree that if it was foreclosed in Wells Fargo's name, then that would be problematic?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, but I think we can be more specific.
After Wells Fargo, well, strike that question. As part of your investigation, you mentioned you looked into see why Wells Fargo didn't answer. Do you recall talking about that?
I'm sorry.
You were investigating what's called a default. Do you
Right.
recall mentioning that?
Yes.
And what did you find out in terms of why Wells Fargo did not file an answer. Your Honor, this is going to go to punitives, a reckless disregard for consequence, because at some point in time, my client notifies Wells Fargo of the situation. Wells Fargo passes it off to PNC. They do nothing until the property is transferred, then they enter an answer 8 days later.
Your Honor, we've covered this repeatedly. He's talking of the default as by definition conduct that happened after the filing of the lawsuit, which is not relevant to punitive damages. I'd ask to strike Mr. Haydari's comment right there because
Your Honor, if I may
Well,
respond.
no, I don't need a response. I'll just remind the jury that the commentary of the lawyers is not evidence. However, the nature of Wells Fargo's conduct before the lawsuit is filed, I think is relevant based on the claims as alleged. So I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
just to clear, Your Honor, he was talking about conduct after the lawsuit was filed. He was asking about the default, which could not have happened until the lawsuit was filed.
All right, fair point.
And just for clarification, we're talking about the transaction. We don't care about litigation conduct. We care about the loss of my client's home, which is,
Okay, so then anything from the default afterwards wouldn't fall into that.
well, let's talk about before the actual default.
You can ask your next question.
Sure. Do you know when Wells Fargo got notice of this lawsuit?
Not until the complaint was served on Wells Fargo.
And so once the complaint was served on Wells Fargo, do you know how Wells Fargo responded?
I think it's post-lawsuit conduct. That's not relevant.
Your Honor, I think the standard is transaction, the underlying transaction. I don't care about the litigation conduct. We're not making a claim about improper litigation conduct. We're trying to figure out how the property left and got transferred to a third party, basically outside the purview of my client being able to get it back.
I'll let you take that up during a break, but for now, I think let's move on to the next topic. I'll let you, we can bring that back up if you need to.
Do you have any knowledge as far as whether PNC Bank was authorized to foreclose on Ms. Zong's property on behalf of Wells Fargo in this situation beyond what you just talked about?
Discussing calls for legal conclusion.
What? If the question is whether he has knowledge of it, then I'll allow that question.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow the question.
Beyond what we just talked about, going through your affidavit briefly, do you have any other knowledge about whether or not PNC had the authority to act on Wells Fargo's behalf in foreclosing on Ms. Zong's property?
No, I don't.
And so beyond your diligence and what you just found and what you testified, there's nothing else out there that would justify, based on your knowledge, PNC's actions?
It's a flip side of the coin. All overruled.
I'm aware of nothing else.
I have no extra questions for you this time. Thank you.
All right. Is there any? How much time do you think you might need, Mr. Howard?
Probably less than 10 minutes, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, let's go through the first round of examinations on the defendants, and we'll see if we can take a minute after that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Favorite.
Hello,
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
I will move right along. So you testified that at some point Wells Fargo became aware of the lawsuit when it was served. Is that an accurate statement of what you testified to?
That's correct.
Was Wells Fargo aware of the foreclosure before it was served with the lawsuit?
It was not.
And can you tell me what Wells Fargo's involvement with the loan was?
None at all.
Okay. But my understanding is they acted as securities administrator with regard to the trust that the loan was held in.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you just break it down as well as possible for a layman what a securities administrator is?
Sure. Generally speaking, the securities administrator role is specifically for the trust itself and not for individual loans. after the servicer for the trust, which holds hundreds of loans, passes collections from those loans to the trust, the securities administrator is responsible for making the proper distributions from that collection money to investors in the trust.
Okay. Okay, so they're investors in a pool of mortgage loans and the securities administrator pays proceeds from the loans out to the investors in line with their investment in the
That's
pool.
correct.
So in that role, Wells Fargo was not responsible for Ms. Zong's mortgage payments, accepting them or applying them or any of that.
Well, that's correct.
They weren't involved with Ms. Zong's escrow account, any of the stuff we've heard about today.
That's right.
Did they ever communicate with Ms. Zong prior to the foreclosure?
No,
Did they, to your knowledge, has Wells Fargo ever communicated with Ms. Zong about the loan or the foreclosure?
to my knowledge, no.
And to your knowledge, did Wells Fargo ever send any correspondence to Ms. Zong?
To my knowledge, no.
And would Wells Fargo have been involved with the hiring of foreclosure counsel or the sending of foreclosure notices?
Absolutely not.
Finally, to your knowledge, was Wells Fargo involved with any credit reporting that might have been made on the loan?
No.
No further questions.
Mr. Tobin, did you have any questions? Any redirect or recross rather on those points?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Are you still asking for a sidebar? Okay. Mr. Jury, why don't we take 5? We're going to go right up to 5 today. Let's have you back in 5 minutes and we'll go from there.
All rise for the jury.
All right. Any preference on whether the witness stays here while we have this discussion?
That's to be excused just for a moment.
Okay. Well, if you could step out just for a moment, sir, just out in the gallery, or not the gallery, the hallway. All right. So just from square one, because I've just been getting kind of confused in the tangles.
Yes.
What was the line of questioning you were hoping to get in that we kind of put in a box for a second here?
We had to. First line of questioning two. The second line is apparent. I need to go back and look at my notes for the first line. But one of these issues, Your Honor, was I was trying to go into when Wells Fargo came into the case and basically when they received notice of the situation, the lawsuit. And Your Honor basically excluded it for the time being because the other side is arguing that this is post-litigation conduct. Now, the issue here is that we're not trying to demonstrate any sort of post-litigation conduct for what we talked about with 13-611. We're attempting to describe it because the core allegation of my complaint, the core harm of my client's situation is that her house was taken. And at some point, it got tossed aside. And the fact, yes.
So is it for the punitive damages then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is whether punitive damages, the evidence supporting them, can arise from post lawsuit conduct. Is that accurate?
Well, yes, and it's not necessarily post lawsuit. It's part of the transaction. I mean, the harm alleged is that they took my client's house and she requested, her request for relief is to get it back. And it's almost like I sue you for the pencil, and then as soon as.
But when the phrasing of the questions is focusing on, when did you get the complaint and when did you get the notice? That seems to be focused squarely on the lawsuit, not necessarily their interactions with the song.
No, but it's when they received notice that there was an issue here. And what they did was they didn't investigate. They did nothing. And that's where you get into the conscious disregard for consequences.
Okay. All right. Well, we need to get some clarity then on exactly Let's go back to our 101 on punitive damages and see where we are. Any response to that, Mr.? Let me start with Mr. Howard.
First, Your Honor, Mr. Hidari dramatically misstated what Mr. Favor's testimony was. He testified that they received a copy of the complaint and they investigated. I don't think they said we did nothing.
Well, I kind of cut him off before we could explore that. So I don't know if I really let him go the full range of what he thinks they might have said or how they would have responded. But let's assume they said they threw it in the trash and ignored it. Is that relevant for punitive damages? All right.
Cited case law since it's the very full time we discussed it.
Well, I think we've always done that in the context of attorney's fees. Right?
We can cite cases, Your Honor, for punitive damages as well. But it's the same rule effectively.
I'll have to pull up the case site, Your Honor, but the question is, conduct can demonstrate a conscious disregard for consequences. In a very simple example, a textbook example is if there is a car accident and then subsequently you don't follow up with the person who's injured, or you leave the scene of an accident, or you do something else after the actual transaction, after the actual harm, that is evidence of not caring what happens. And in this situation, defendants.
Well, I mean, I can understand the argument. It just seems, I bet Wells Fargo, if they really wanted to, they'd love to have the chance to answer your lawsuit if you want to reopen it. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't see how that really, it showed professional maybe negligence, but I don't see how it really showing indifference to the case.
Your Honor, it's a case I cited before, but Citizens in Southern National Bank versus Bogus. Supreme Court case 245 Georgia 412 says there is no provision for punitive damages arising because of conduct occurring during the litigation. The aggravating circumstances must relate to the tort being sued on.
That's
and the answer, the default, all this stuff happened after the foreclosure, after the property was lost to Miss Zong.
I think that characterization is what I agree with. It's because of the tort we're suing on. It has nothing to do with the conduct of litigation. We don't care about if they're sending 50 discovery requests or misbehaving in that regard. The issue here is we tell them, hey, there's an improper foreclosure on our house and we want it back. We need some help. And instead of actually looking into it, they toss it in the bin. Effectively, they send it over to PNC saying, hey, you guys deal with it. And they perform no due diligence. They perform no investigation. They could have, but financially, it's cheaper to just pass it off.
All the testimony, Your Honor, is that we had no connection with this foreclosure. That's been consistent throughout the course of the trial. And I don't think Mr. Hidari asked when he had PNC's witness, did they investigate after the lawsuit was filed and trying to get the property back to them all? What else could Wells Fargo do? But
all right. So I would agree with you, Mr. Hidari, if you have something to show. Again, the underlying tort we're focused on is wrongful foreclosure, which is focused on notice, right? And so if you have some evidence of their conduct surrounding that, or at the time they found out about it, but when it gets passed or how they respond to a lawsuit, I'm not seeing how that ties into it.
The issue isn't, Your Honor, that we're trying to talk about the tort. And the tort was, one of the requests we sought was injunctive relief. We wanted to get the house back. That was the goal of the litigation. That's what my client's going to testify about. And when Wells Fargo would put on notice that you guys improperly foreclosed, instead of investigating, they basically said, PNC, you tender a defense. They didn't look into it. And then according to Mr. Favorite's affidavit, had they been aware of it, they would have sought to rescind the foreclosure sale. They would have done something about it. Yet in this situation, Miss Zong did make them aware of it and they didn't do anything.
conduct after the litigation was filed, Your Honor, the tort is wrongful foreclosure, as you said.
Did you have any evidence that she personally, or in some manner, maybe the letters that you were writing, like to PNC, other than her, filing a complaint and suing them, was there some other kind of notice that you wanted to ask them about, or interactions between you or her and Wells Fargo before the filing of the complaint?
Not before the filing of the complaint. It was just PNC's response.
All
Wells
right.
Fargo's response to
Well, I'll let you, if you want to proffer for the record everything you think that he would have laid out, feel free to do that now, but I think I'm not seeing that as being a appropriate evidence to prove punitive damages.
Thank you, Your Honor. Essentially, the proffer for the record is the fact that Wells Fargo was put on notice of the fact that this foreclosure should not have occurred, that it was improper. And essentially the same situation that resulted in a default resulted in my client losing their home, which is Wells Fargo decided to simply pass it off to PNC, told them to deal with it, and did not perform any investigation. Had they performed even the most minimal investigation, they would have recognized, according to what Mr. Favorite said, that this shouldn't have happened. And had they done that, then my client could have retained her home. Instead, and this is where we get into the possible aggravating factors, they waited until the property was transferred. The finder of fact would see that the transfer occurred, and then Wells Fargo jumped into the lawsuit 8 days later, which seems fortuitous.
And the notice you're referring to is that's after the complaint, right?
The notice would be the service of the complaint.
Okay. And you're saying it was after the service of the complaint, property was later transferred?
Yes, after service of the complaint, that's when Miss Zong's property was subsequently transferred.
Okay. All right. And since they've said on the stand already that they never knew anything about this up until they got served with the complaint, aren't these arguments you could still make in closing based on the evidence that has been presented?
I think the problem is establishing what diligence Wells Fargo did once they actually got this lawsuit. And in this situation, they got this lawsuit, and rather than actually looking into the merits, actually looking to see basically if any of the allegations my client made was correct, even though the foreclosure was performed in its name, it simply passed it off to PNC and told PNC, you deal with it. Had they looked into it, just like what we alleged, they would have found what we said was true. And per that affidavit, they would have worked to rescind the foreclosure sale and everything else. One of the big problems in this situation, Your Honor, is that when these deeds are filed in Fulton County, sometimes it takes a while for them to actually show up in the records. So when my client learned about the foreclosure, our hands were tied to some extent that we had to go against the parties that were on the notices that basically reflected the fact that this foreclosure occurred in their name. Hence, Wells Fargo being sued. A cursory investigation yielded that they really shouldn't have done the foreclosure, which is why we asserted that in our lawsuit. But then instead of actually coming in or doing some investigation, the property got transferred, then they jump in and are like, yeah, it shouldn't have happened in their name. I think that's a conscious indifference to consequence.
And Your Honor, it's entirely wrapped up in the litigation strategy. It's all post-litigation. It's nothing to do with the underlying foreclosure. And the title to the property would have transferred out of Ms. Zong's name at the foreclosure sale. At that point, she no longer had any interest in the property.
All right. Okay. Well, I think the issue is well preserved for the record, and let's keep moving. So I still want to use the last hour we have. And so
5 minutes, Your Honor, just for a council convenience break.
sure. And I believe next witness, Mr. Hidari. All right. So we can get started, and maybe you can find some aspect that you think, as we get closer to 5, you can let me know before you move on to some other topic or something. We don't need to just start one. And I don't know if I'm making any sense because it's towards the end of the day. Bottom line is we don't have to go right to 5. As we're approaching 5, if you think you've found a good stopping point, you can let me know. All right, we'll be back. We're taking 5. You can let the jury know we'll be back in 5 minutes. Hit that button.
I know, hit that again.
The problem is that tap it, just tap it. I got it. Yeah, the problem is not letting me testify about the attorney fees, and so it has to come in through her.
Just waiting on the jury.
Well, so we don't just. They don't have all.
Heard them down and attention, talk to her.
Not either of them.
Call her. Yes, Deputy William. Yes. You leaving? Okay. All right, we'll check on me at 4:30. All right. Hey, I got something you can do for me. Can you lock down 4 and 5? Because Wallace gotta take one over. All right, thanks.
Why do I need more?
Court will now come to order.
All right. If everyone's ready, let's go ahead and bring in the jury. And if we could have Miss Zong make her way up.
All rise for the jury.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All jurors are present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Plaintiff may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll call plaintiff herself.
No, if you could do that.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth of the matter? Position yourself up to the mic a little closer. I know we don't have voters. Okay. State your first and last name with the spelling of both names for the court reporter.
My name is Fei Zong, Fei.
She is very loud and I can't hear with all the shut. So you're gonna have to speak up now and you're gonna get really close. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Okay, I'm sorry. But
You can sit down.
thank you. My name is Fei Zong, Fei. Last name is Zhong.
Faye, this afternoon, I just want to go into background information before we get into the meanwhile of why we're here. So I want to start off with just your background and could you tell the jury how old you are?
I was born in 1960, the year of starvation in China.
And when did you decide to move to the United States?
Sorry to give me a little bit time. After I divorced my ex-husband for a few years, and then in 1992, and I was introduced to my very close friend, and she lived in LA, and her godbrother, and we met, and we have a letter, send the letter to each other and call. And after a while, and he told me, excuse me, want to go to China to marry me and to meet me. And we met in the 92, and we spent some time. And he proposed to me, want to marry me.
Before you moved to the United States, what did you used to do in China?
I have work, and before that, during the school year, that was the Cultural Revolution. And then after I got out of work and I have a job in a factory. And after that, and then I have the chance to go to the college. Repeat your question again. I got lost a little bit. Sorry.
It's okay. I was just asking what you,
Because of the whole day, it was too tight. Sorry. Just please. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the microphone. Can you hear that? Okay.
so I was just asking about what you used to do in China before you came to the United States.
I just have a job and work for the company.
When you ended up coming to the United States, what did you, well, first of all, where did you go?
I went to LA first.
And when you went to LA, what did you used to do?
That time, very short, I went to LA and I could have access to go back to Hong Kong. And because I'm free from, the country before, it's hard to travel and hard to get the passport to be out of country. And because after I came to United States, immigrant to here, so I have the freedom. And that time, Hong Kong was very good. It was 1990 before, that's still under the British colony. So that time, the economic very good, and I know somebody there. So I starting to like a back and forth doing something.
And then after traveling back and forth in Hong Kong to do business, did you eventually switch what you wanted to do or your job?
Yes, and because I have the chance to immigrate to America, of course, I kind of like start my new chapter of my life.
And when you came to start this new chapter, did you come with your son, Jason, who we met a few days ago?
Yes, and he can. The reason I came here, and also I feel very really happy, is because of him. And I find I have somebody I met, and we can step the new life.
At some point, did you decide to stop traveling back and forth from Hong Kong and just start working in California?
Yes, and it's great to travel, and it's kind of like a new world for me to be free and like go to Hong Kong to make business and then make a living. But very short of time, I realized my son is get to the school age. And then I really like, and after I came here, I met a friend and I make a friend, and they have their kids like my son's age. And then of course I just ask some questions about the school here, and I facing, that time I need to send my son to school. So I just debated here, and also everybody think here the education, but that time, compared the China I live is, there's nothing you can compare. So I just decided stop doing, traveling, doing business, and then settle down in America.
Was education important to you?
Yes,
Has education always been important to you?
yes. And actually, my parents, they are educated. And my parents, they kind of like not go to school, but they have the chance to have you kind of like a high the private, kind of know how to read. That time, the lady, the woman, they know school. But my grandmom, because her family, and she was able to read, and she was able to become midwife. So for me, and it's very poor, and during the Cultural Revolution, and pretty much there's nothing you can learn. And from the 12 years education from the elementary school to high school, they cut it to 10. And most of the time, and we need to go to the farm and maybe visit the factory. And so that time, actually, we didn't learn that much things. But just because my father was a teacher, and that time we even didn't have a book, and nothing, and we don't have a toy. But just because my father was a teacher, we live in the.
All right. Ma'am, if you could just answer the questions that he asked.
So I just think I have access to read a book. I think the education is very, very important. It makes you smart and make you can during the problem, deal with the problem. Sorry.
So no. Before you moved here, what was your relationship like with your sister?
Yesterday, everybody heard that. And she came to school from the first grade. And then she sit next to me. And I kind of, we graduate the same year.
And what about your relationship with your parents? Did you have, well, what was that like?
They are educated and they teach us a lot and watch us. And I admire them and the way they handle the things. And during that environment, they try a lot of things, try hard to raise us. I was almost not survived when I was born. And then they still make it for me.
And when you came here, you didn't have any of your relatives with you, did you? It was just you and your son.
Yes.
And after you came here, you mentioned it, you were traveling to Hong Kong and at some point you wanted to sort of stay in LA. What type of business did you start doing when you were in LA?
It's like an import and export. And that time in the aluminum scrap, there's the high demand to go over there. And also the car part. And that time, it's kind of just the beginning, opening to the war, China. So the situation is kind of like they have a high demand for these things.
And how long did you keep doing that?
It was very short of the time, when I settled down, I still try to keep doing that.
And then did you start doing something else after that?
Yes, and but that business still require to travel. And even, it's kind of like the potential contact is in Florida, everywhere, something like that. And then it was hard for me, kind of like leave my son. She just that time was 5 or 6. And then when I came, and then after that, I just have some people give me all the idea. The people here, they're very great, very nice. And one of the things they suggest me, you could do this, you could do that. So I just think maybe I could find something. I can see my son come home. And
So what did you find to do?
Yes. One of the things they told me, the real estate. And, they're talking about how the market in, that area and how to do it things. And also the same time, that time when I went between Hong Kong, and then I pick up how they doing the real estate in Hong Kong. So let me just, very soon, I just kind of got pop in my mind, and I just think maybe I can do real estate here.
What type of real estate did you start doing?
I was very fortunate, and at the beginning, I could buy the condo. And then the condo, that time when I bought it, and it's kind of like not very good condition. And somebody represent me and then kind of like negotiate. That's the first thing, to try to get a good deal. And after that, I try to make it with a little bit clean. Okay, let's say copy or stuff. So that I stay that. And after that, and I get to the point, that's the place I live. I can't make anything for my living. So I just looking for some kind of like further out the good area, and some of the house like at the border of the good city, like a Walnut Creek. Probably a lot of people, they know that's the very nice.
When you were doing these initial renovations, were you successful in doing them?
At that time, I'm just happy, the time is flexible. And during my son go to school, then I can walk that. It's not require, certain hour. The time I had to fix my time.
And how long did you keep doing those types of renovations?
It was until I moved to Georgia.
Why did you decide to move to Georgia?
When I settled down with my son in the Bay Area, and actually things was happening is very just kind of very sudden. And one day before Christmas, my daughter, my sister called me, and then she told me she got the visa to come to United States visiting, and she came, and very shortly, and then she went back, and then I think the next maybe one or more than 1 year, and then she told me the whole family going to go Atlanta, and at that time, I just don't know I didn't know where's Atlanta, so I asked. No, I find out that Atlanta is far away from me.
Did you come to visit Atlanta, and what did you think of it?
Yeah, her family came, and then they have a house, and they bought the house in Dunwoody. And right away before that, and then already planned to visit her. So probably just days, not more than 1 week. And then I flew to here to visit her.
Is that why you decided you wanted to move from California to Atlanta?
Oh, that just kind of like think one day I never think I move here. And I never thought that. And I moved there, and then so soon my sister have the chance to move here. But after I find out that's so long distance, and then I just think maybe this is good. And then one day maybe she move California, or I move to here. And so when I came to visit her, actually, it changed my mind. I think here have some of the things I like.
Well, what type of things did you like?
I never kind of like know the geography for United States because when I came here, I didn't have that much knowledge about, the war. Actually, we were close. The whole country was close, and then you don't have any access there. But I like San Francisco. Of course, I came here for everything, change. And then when I came here, and then I find out that time it was quiet. And then it's kind of like the house is long distance. And when I was on 400, and that time the car was less than now, and the 12 at the midnight. And then kind of like it was kind of like, oh, it's quiet. Then I see the trees, and in California, you don't see the tree that much. And also that time when I came, it's about the springtime. The weather, the flower, especially what's that called, the dark, it was the white flower,
Dogwood.
everybody, dogwood. And it was so pretty. And
when you decided to move here, where did you end up staying?
excuse me?
When you moved to Atlanta, where did you live?
Oh, at the beginning, my sister's house is big. It's compared the way I look at, I live in China, and it very small. And actually, when we were young, we grew up to, sleep in the same room, same bed. And it's kind of like a very big, and it's enough for a lot, 5 bedroom. And that time her husband still travel a lot.
And after you lived with your sister, did you eventually decide to rent or buy your own house?
Yes, at that time, the condo, I still have a condo there. And then I stay a lot of time with my sister and even my son, and then came here to school. And then also we just kind of like, the neighbor was very nice. One is attorney, one is a specialty in the medical field, is for the cancer treatment. And they always keep come to check us, offer the help or something like that. And that time my language is not like that good, but I could understand what they're talking. And they give us a lot of information, and then tell me how compare the things here is different from California. And I realized here and doing things.
Let's focus on the question that's asked.
Sorry, thank you.
It's okay. After you decided to, stop living with your sister, did you try to find homes that were close to your sister? Was that important to you?
Yes, and actually after that, my parents, they got the visa to come visit us. So then I just knew my sister's house is not, big enough to hold the whole family with my parents can. So I decided to sell the condo and the stuff in California and find a house for me and my son. And actually, I find the one is very close and to my sister's house, but it's on the other side. It's DeKalb County, I think. That time, the house, same thing. The condition wasn't good. And I think I bought it like close to 200,000 something. And also required to do a lot of things. They have pet and then condition wasn't good, but I remodel it.
So and that actually leads to my next question. Once you came to Georgia, what did you start doing for a living?
And I still have kind of like a idea, and also I have asking around how the real estate market in Georgia. And then I find out here is a lot easy. It was a lot easy, even right now, same thing, than California. And require the capital is a lot, less. So I just start looking around to see what I can find and what can I do.
So in terms of that, getting into real estate, did you start developing properties or what?
Not get to that point. And first, I want to see if I still keep doing remodeling thing home. And actually, that time, around Dunwoody is a lot of home is under 100,000. But when I looking around, I find there is new subdivision, and then there's a lot for sale. And then I just think, oh, maybe maybe I could start with building the home, building the house. So I purchased 2 lots.
And how did that go?
Look back, I think maybe I just didn't know a lot of things, and then I jumped on that. And I just think after I bought it, I just think how I started, maybe I make it, maybe I don't make it, is very new. But this first stuff, and then you need to have a house plan. And also the neighbor already started, because that was, I believe, is 10 lot or something like that. And the other already start. And the listing agent was nice. And then he knew I'm new here. And also he knew just the first time to build a home. And he would give me some information. So need to find the architect. And I don't know who tell me or how I get to that. I find the architect, the name by John South, and he live in Dunwoody, and also he have his architect, office in Dunwoody. So everything is just kind of like in Dunwoody. It's so convenient.
After you build those houses, were you able to sell them?
Yes, and I kind of like, he taught me a lot. At the beginning, I told him, I say, I want to build the California style and with the stucco. And he told me, that's nice, but the stucco, there's the 2 types of stucco. And here still is south. And my people, they like it. He feed me a lot of information and then tell me why the brick stuff working, and tell me not to make a very kind of like a Californian style and modern style, and then you would have a hard time to fit to some client. They like that style. Just tell me you need to think about these things. And so at that time, I say, oh, so break. And then get to the point. And that time, it was very easy to get the permit. And you just fill up the paper, maybe just 1 piece. And you tell how many square feet you want. And then you don't need to say what I want to put there. And then you just get the permit.
After you build and sold these houses, did you keep doing it?
Yes.
And
then actually the agent sold me a lot, and then kind of like see the house is big. It was big. and their house, and the rest of them one, they are very traditional, and their square feet is not like the two house I built. And he said, you are overbuilt here. Now it's not people can, the market is not support for what you do. You're going to lose your money because you put so many things there. And then, another thing is you have to be aware the weather here is going to drag you and these things, But very soon when we finish, finish the inside, there is kind of like have the structure and then also have the sheetrock in, and then you could tell the layout, the floor plan layout. So very, very quick, and then we got the contract.
Did you keep building houses and bigger houses and nicer houses?
Yes, and right after that, we still keep looking the lot. I drive a lot around the Dangwudi, which is very not big. And then I find another lot. It's just the street, same area is very close, maybe a couple minutes to get there. So we built that one. And after that, I find another one. It's same thing like that, perimeter, and the distance is very close to where I live and in Dangwudi. And I got to one point, to buy the one lot is like 1 acre. And I got a very good deal for that. And that house, when I get the contract, and think they upgraded a lot of things.
Just approximately, how many houses would you build a year?
I do the custom home. Actually, that time, if I, with this effort, further out Dangwudi, I could do a lot more. But I still like, what I have experience for the first two house. So I just only average is 2 house a year.
Your Honor, this might be a natural breaking point, unless you want me to keep going.
What's the next topic you think you need to get into?
We're going to start talking about the house that she built.
The what?
No, Latour, the property that's at issue.
Let's get into that a little bit.
Okay. So at some point, did you ever decide that you wanted to build a house for yourself?
Yes.
And tell me about that.
Actually, when I get to the point, I always have, before I have a Latour, I already built a few house, even one kind like a small subdivision, and the house was nice. I never think, the location or, some sort of the stuff I like. So I had then just think when I find the one I like, I will build my home and my dream home. And in 2003, it was in 2003 that the time, sorry, my mind, and I drove around and I find it a lot. And yes, people, some of them, they need to see a flag lot or something. This one wasn't, but the location was very, good. That was, I like. Actually, I jumped on that, and I just told the other side and tell them I don't need to have my real estate agent. And now I knew it's going to, it would go too fast. So I jumped on that the second day or just the same night, and I asked the other agent prepare the contract. So I do put some condition to investigate for this lot, it buildable or not. And so I have some time. And the couple days later, I met another, the builder. And then we were talking, and then he said, oh, the area in Dangwudi was so hard, and the law put it there right away the second day already under contract. And then I say, where you say that? Where? And then he told me Latour. And then I think, because I already knew there's no law in the area, I say, I got it.
What do you saw it a lot? Well, you mentioned that you jumped on it. You wanted it. Why did you like that lot?
The lot is in, it's very private. When you get into that street, and then both sides, you thought you get lost. And then you thought you went to the forest, and then you went to the park. And then when you drive a little bit down, and then you just right away see right open on your left-hand side, there is subdivision. Actually, the first house was a stucco, but they very nice, very big house. It's gated. And then this side, the house is smaller, and then the subdivision was, is kind of like a small. And then this lot, just when you turn into this subdivision, and it was on your left-hand side, the first one, and the lot was big. And then you went close to the street, and then you drive down in, and then pretty much you didn't see behind you that was a street.
Was it close to your sister's house?
Yes, that's some sort of things that's my condition. That's what I put for me. I need to close to my sister.
Do you remember how close it is?
Probably 2 miles.
And when you found this lot, it sounds like you knew you wanted it as soon as you saw it.
Yes. And actually, I brought the architect to see it.
And at that point in time, you obviously found a lot you wanted. What did you think about the house you were going to build on it? What was the purpose for doing this?
I was so happy. And then I say, okay, my dream is come true. I already been there, in United States is 10 years. And I'm so glad that time my daughter was 4 years old. And it's kind of like for me too old to have a kid at that time. And I just think I couldn't imagine, I'm all my cousins, most of people, they just have you still have one child, policy. And I could be free of that. And then in the Chinese, then kind of like I'm good. One son, one daughter, it means the Chinese word is good. So I say, okay, I need to have my family. I need to have my dream home. And then I knew that time my son is almost, finished high school. He decided to finish 1 year early than 12 years. And then I just think now I need to focus to raise my daughter.
And in terms of the house, what type of things did you want to put in your house?
That's a step by step. And I told, I told the architect, and actually that time, already been 10 years with the architect. Actually, he was very nice. He actually, John William, and that was the real, that's the company, built high-end home in Dangwudi and Sandy Spring. It was his client. And when I brought him to see that, and then I said, doing the study first, and then say, can I build my home here, and then, yes, and then I say, I know it was challenge because it was deep. He said, everything could be possible, just only to the money, how much you can afford it to make it work. That's he told me.
Was that property supposed to be one of those houses you just built and sold to other people?
Excuse me? Sorry.
Were you trying to build that house to sell to other people, or were you trying to build it for yourself?
That's for my home.
Would it have made sense to buy that to build for other people based on how the lot was?
I have the architect to design it, and then from the basement, and I have 3 floors and have enough space. Before that, and all the house I built, I never finished the basement, never designed to finish the basement until I got the contract. And because I know for the square feet, and it's enough, you speak enough for the family. If you want to finish the basement, pretty much is very personal. And some of them, they are not kind of like just want the basement have extra room. And they want to kind of like have an entertainment, or sometimes they want to design for like that the kids, separate.
So tell me about some of the things that you specifically designed in this home just for yourself.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of like a little bit tired. Let me see. First of all, the log and the I want to raise it because it's too deep, and now I want to raise it to close the level of the street, and that costs the foundation, and then I had to put double foundation there and secure the house could sit safely, no problem in the future. Then I want the house 4 brick. And then I tell the architect, and then I want the inside is like really open and sort of like, the California style, wide open. And then I told every room I want to have own closet, bathroom, and then I want the one behind that, because that's have a great view, and I want that is pretty much is the whole wall is like open, that you need to have the windows, just window next to the window. And I also one time when I drive through to see the house, and then my daughter just point out, oh, the gazebo is nice. And then I tell her, one day I'll build the gazebo for you. So I say I need to have a gazebo.
And how did you design that gazebo?
Yes. So the architect, he was very nice. He's a great gentleman. And when I have question, or when I tell him what I want, he really designed the stuff the way I like, even better.
What about the materials? What type of materials did you put into this house?
The brick color, that's what I like. And also I like to have the floor plan, the floor have the stone. And also the stone is travertine. If you put 12 by 12, that maybe is quite normal. And then I choose to put 18 by 18. And also I do want to have not the plank, because the house is not big, but when you wide open, it's kind of like a big. And then I don't want to make it kind of like a very plain. And then I tell them I need to have the accents at the corner, and I want to have a border. And also I make it, and the door is high and the door is big. It's a special order. And also I say the window, I want to not like, very small window, and then, kind of like when you have the house, the window, the layout is kind of like, the looking is not nice, it's kind of cutting the window is, and I put a lot of column, the wood handmade carve, and the fireplace I designed, and also is special. It kind of like every single corner, and then tell, that's my special, and then that's what I like.
Did you, when you built it, were you designing it also with your kids in mind?
Yes, and I let them to pick when it get to finish. And first of all, of course, let them pick which room, which one they like. And my daughter, of course, picked the one next to the master. And I told them they can pick the color, and they can pick the light fixture, and even they can pick the counter, the bathroom, and the vanity, and
Well, what did the home mean to you after you made it?
it's such a very joyful. And when we move in, and because, we have a warm-up party there, I turn on all the lights, all the access light, and, on the ceiling. And the first night, everybody is so happy, and my guest is happy, and because we can see a lot of, a different stuff. And then after that, we feel so comfortable, and like you have each bedroom, you have your own shower, and run to sometimes, it might have cold water, if you have the same time. And then I just already thought about that ahead, and then I put the big, the water heater. And so they try a lot of things. And then after that, they also, because the house is a lot of light, even at the night, when you turn, you don't feel that was nighttime. And then I put the power voltage, and it's bigger enough, not, for the whole house, and also for the basement. And then they try everything, and then they turn to go to, there's a central vacuum. And that night, they kind of like play with the things in the house.
Would you have family come over to your house often?
Yes, and basically, my sister, but that time I already have here established my social life, and I have a lot of a friend consider is kind of like a sister and a godmother, and it's quite warm, and quite looks like we never think, okay, we kind of like not the family. We just feel this all is my family. And one of them, she came a lot. Actually, she was live in Dangwudi, but her house was lost to the tornado, and she came to we call her mom.
How often would you have your sister come over?
It quite a lot. Before I have house, she was always hosting, and then she was kind of like her family is like my family. I have the key. I don't need to tell her when I come and when I go, and I leave. Yeah, since I have that house and then everything changed, they went to my house. I'm becoming the host and for the event. And also my daughter, after my son left for the college, and it's kind of becoming single kid. And then she met a lot of friends. And then through her, I met her friends' parents. And we are kind of like a very nice. And we talk these things is about the kid, how to raise the kid. And I invite them. Of course, they invite us back too. So the activity was so busy. And because I have that house, and sometimes I just like a babysitter their kids, and the parents, they need to go out. And, sometimes they have some, their couple, they go out, so, and the Christmas, and the first Christmas, I took my my daughter, and to pick up the Christmas tree. I said, this is the first Christmas tree, and then you could pick, for the house, you could pick the biggest one because we have the tall, big foyer. And I took her to buy the ornament to decorate the Christmas tree. And I told her, after you do this, you could invite your friend to come over to decorate the Christmas tree. And so that was the first year. It's still I think she still remember the Christmas tree and the Christmas decoration. And the morning after the Christmas finished, the New Year, and I told her, next year, you still can doing this, but we need more ornament, and also it's on sale. Macy's, they have 70% sale for the Christmas ornament. So I took her to go there. She was so excited and then bought a lot, and then we kind of keep it and wait for the next Christmas.
Your Honor, I'm about to, I think now is a good breaking point. I'm going to go into the mortgage and so forth.
All right. Members of the jury, thank you for your attention today. From what we're able to estimate, I think there is a good chance by the end of tomorrow, we'll be able to get the case in your hands for deliberations. And from there, the timing is up to you. But that would be closer to the end of the day tomorrow. So plan accordingly. Let's get back to it at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. As always, please don't do any research outside of this courtroom, and don't discuss the case with anyone, including amongst yourselves. Thank you so much.
All else, what do you do?
All right, Ms. Zong, you can step back to counsel's table
Thank you.
if you'd like. And I'll ask, I think we've got some exhibits left behind at the witness box. If we could collect those. I think, let me inquire first with the defendants. I think Ms. Zong, according to the estimate, has at most about an hour and 15 minutes to go on direct. We'll have cross, and then potentially one more witness on behalf of the plaintiff. Would there be any additional witnesses or witnesses recalled on behalf of the defense at this point? Any expectations there? Or essentially, once the plaintiff rests, are the defendants likely resting?
No.
You have additional witnesses?
We expect we'll be making a motion.
Well, I recognize the motions. I'm talking about evidence.
And we will, and we do have another witness. We referred to earlier, Mr. Olson.
All right, and tell me about Mr. Olson.
He is from McCurdy and Candler.
Okay.
So you can talk about the foreclosure process and notices.
All right, and how long do you expect you need for
I
him?
wouldn't think it'd be very long. I would think 30 to 45 minutes on direct, perhaps.
Okay, for Wells Fargo. All right. Okay, and just because we may get to a point where we can at least start with closings tomorrow, if not get them all in. Depending on how things flow, I think it's gonna, I'd ask the parties for any of their exhibits that they had admitted. We're gonna need, that you think are gonna need to go back to the jury. We're gonna need physical copies of those. And so I'll let y'all keep track of that, whichever ones were actually admitted, whichever ones you think are going back to the jury, so that we can have those already ready to go and send back to them as soon as they begin in the deliberations. Anything else we need to address now, Mr. Haydari, before breaking?
No, Your Honor, but my understanding is that we're not going to deal with the fee section or any of that on,
That's right. No, that wouldn't be until part 2.
okay, and
And so I estimate that, I don't see how we get to that before Friday if there's a need for part 2.
once again, I respectfully take exception to that.
It's already on the record. Anything else we need to handle today before coming back tomorrow?
Your Honor, so your expectation is that we'll plaintiff finish his case, we'll have a motion and we can go forward. This is supposed to be going right now. Pencil put out its case, we'll have to have a charge conference, I suppose. So that's gotta be tomorrow. And you want to close tomorrow as well?
I think there's a possibility that we could. So, plaintiff would have the right to open and close. I suppose he could waive his first closing. And so, if we're sitting here having gotten through the charge conference and gotten through everything and it's 3:30, I think we'd want to kick off closings. Just because, again, we're trying to finish this thing in a week. So I would say if he decides to waive his first closing, then you'd be on deck. And perhaps, things move quicker than we anticipate. So we're kind of within that zone where you just got to be ready for it all.
Just make sure I understand that plaintiff will take another hour or so, it should be done, but the plaintiff should be resting. Well, no, plaintiff should be finished his case, subject to defendant's cross, which will take a little while.
Right.
That should be about 10:15. We should be ready to cross.
That's right. We started right about 4:15. He said he needed 2 hours for a direct. So 10:15 would be when I turn it over to you. And then he said he had another 20 minutes for a potential final witness. That's my understanding of our plan of attack. I believe so.
And Your Honor, I have 2 sections left with my client, and I think that sounds about accurate.
Okay. Anything else? He said that sounds accurate. Anything else we need to clarify or take up now?
Your Honor.
Okay. Anything you can anticipate evidentiary wise? I think there's been a few curveballs and I'm trying to roll with them as best I can. But if there's anything you can anticipate, sometimes the motion in limine would help me. Just throw that out there.
The only one I can think of is that stipulation or the number we called it was inoperable.
All right. You still need more time to consider that, Mr. Tobin?
Yeah, been in the courtroom all day and I've talked to my client, which involves speaking to some folks back at the office. So
All right. Do you think we'd have some idea of that by tomorrow morning? Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that then. We'll be in recess till 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, guys, take care. Thank you. Madam Transporter, take care.
I gotta stay here for at least another hour. to finish the check. Okay, okay. Okay, I mean, there's.
No problem. Might see you tomorrow, might not.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, because you did, it was, yeah. 3 days with you. Yeah. Never is found.
Yeah,
So-
ready for
Yeah.
that.
With that pressure. There.
For mine, yeah. Your car.
Yeah. It's a big drop. Oh, that's right.
Okay. Yeah. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Discuss.
Nope, I'm right behind you.
It looks like it's what it is. We've had this very.
Yeah, exactly. So Marcy, I sent you everything.
Okay, I saw an email from you, so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Number two, so if you have any problems accessing the exhibits or
Okay.
anything, just let
Well,
us.
can I text you?
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm used to with court reporters and like they already have all that stuff. I wasn't even thinking.
How